7 boring ways 3D artists can make money. You can thank me later. Everyone wants flashy gigs in games or movies, but the truth is, the boring stuff is what pays the bills. Most 3D artists overlook these income streams because they sound uncool. That's a big mistake, because the old adage in business is true: boring makes money. What we will talk about in this video will show you 7 simple but overlooked ways to earn steady income as a 3D artist. None of these are glamorous, but they're proven to work. You'll walk away with realistic money-making options you can start this week. Who am I? My name is Dwayne Elahie. I'm a CG Supervisor. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, been mentoring for 15 plus years. A lot of my students now have salary jobs of $70K plus annually. I've been at D Studios, EA, Electronic Arts, ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, Pixar, Disney. We haven't met yet, but you've met my work. I've worked on Netflix The Witcher. You can look at my IMDb here. And The Hunger Games, to name a few, James Cameron's Avatar. I've been on, Assassin's Creed. Also, I was a CG character rigging supervisor for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. Been on the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball franchise. You can look at IMDb for more of that. You may have seen these films and TV shows: K-pop Demon Hunters, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. All these at Sony ImageWorks. I built tools and pipelines and workflows for these. And I mentioned this before: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, the character rigging supervisor for that. So anything that articulated move, characters, props, any concept art went through me to figure that out, how to get that done for the whole team. And other projects such as Netflix, The Witcher, Secret Invasion, a lot of other Marvel projects as well, like Iron Man, James Cameron's Avatar, Hunger Games, to name a few. Again, you can look at my IMDb and other games, the AAA games I've worked on. So, 7 ways you can make money. So, first way, which I know basically all of these things I've either done myself or know people who are pretty lucrative in these markets. One is 3D stock assets. You could upload models, textures, rigs to stock marketplaces for passive income. Or you could host your own as well, your own marketplace, where you could set your price, but that's more if you're going to build your brand as well. You're going to do it that way, right? This moved. Let's put that back here. Here, next one, number two as a way is product visualization. This one's another one I've done a lot of as well. I know people who do this. So if you want to showcase furnitures for stores and ads and marketing, different tools like actual physical, let's say hardware tools, packaging, how a package would look if you want to kind of visualize that. Companies need realistic previews before production. A lot of times when you're actually pitching an idea to executives or decision makers, you have to show the vision of the customer journey and what the final result will be, or how the UX, UI, the user interface and the user experience will be before you actually do it, because you got to get it approved. You have to tell the story, how it's going to work. You want to visualize it to show them what the end result is going to be before you're granted the budget to go out and make it and then lead a team to do this. So being able to do these things are very important. And also if you're making ads and client facing, people understand what it is before they get it. A lot of product visualization, and Apple does this a lot, are known. If you go on their website, most of it is product visualization. You imagine what it would look like and feel and how it's going to transform your life and the lifestyle you get before the product's even out. So visualization is very important and can be lucrative if you're in that market. Let's go to the third one. This is another one that is very lucrative. I've done myself as well. And in fact, our course teaches you how to create 3D characters. The second part of that is you could actually sell them by making them physical, and you could actually sell it either by printing, by doing 3D printing physically, which people make it and then sell them. But what people don't actually, not a lot of people know as well, that you could do is that you could actually just send the printing file. You don't actually have to make the physical parts yourself. So you could build your characters, build it in a way that you could actually 3D print it, and you make a .stl file. So whether you're doing hobbies or making miniatures or making collectibles, I do know people who make miniatures or they sculpt them to get them printed for actual board games. He makes a living doing that. But imagine you're making 3D models, and then you sell the files to multiple people and they can print them themselves. You don't even have to have the hardware on your own. You're literally just selling digital files. That's an actual viable option. Fourth one, I've done this for years before doing it for my own company, and then actually make it for public facing as well. Corporate training and simulations. Business pay for boring training assets like safety demos or medical models. I literally went to big flight simulation companies, transportation simulation companies, and they have their own internal team, but sometimes they have their own internal team or they outsource it, and depending on your skill sets as well, they might not have the skill set to do it, or they might want something a little more realistic. And I'm coming from the VFX, feature animation film side, and got contracts or negotiate contracts to redevelop their own training and simulations more according to the vision they want. And so not everything has to be the 3D world or 3D studio. There's a lot of businesses that you might not think of are in dire need to make this, and they don't know how to do that. And if you approach them on your own, as your own, like as a freelancer or as a consultant, you could bring that to life, and it can be a lot more lucrative than actually working at a studio. A fifth one, again, architectural drafts, making floor plans, interior mock-ups, real estate 3D tours. Another one that I've done before, and I know people who do this as a living. There's definitely a market for that. And that's another one of those things that are kind of like, there's an industry for that, and there's a certain like standard, not because it's the best, it's just that what they use. For example, if you're working in visual effects or like feature animation or even games nowadays, right? At this moment, Maya, ZBrush are kind of like standard tool sets, right? Is it the best DCC or digital content creation or 3D software? Not necessarily, but that's what the standard. If you're working, I've also worked as a sound engineer, producing first an analog studio and then moving to digital. When you're doing digital, there's a lot of great DAWs or DAWs, digital audio workstations out there. You probably use Logic, for example. If you're on Mac, a lot of people use that, right? But still the industry standard. If I know I'm working on a commercial project that's going to be released with multiple people and we're sending stems to each other, Pro Tools is the de facto. You don't even ask for it. That's just what people assume you're using, right? Kind of like you assume you're using Maya in the industry of 3D. If you're working architectural visualization and drafts, 3ds Max is the standard. Of course, you could do this all in any other 3D software. People use Blender as well, but it's still the industry. 3ds Max, using Corona or what's the other one? V-Ray. Those are the standards. So if I know I'm doing those type of projects, I know I'm going to be using 3ds Max, and I'm going to have to be using Corona or V-Ray just because that's the standard of that industry, right? Another big thing, logo animations. And this, a lot of small local businesses, whether locally, physically, or you could do small businesses now because of the internet, you could do it worldwide. They love quick 3D intros, especially now with the internet and social media, whether they're doing short form or long form, they want to have their bumper or their brand or their logos in a 3D intro right here for YouTube or branding. You could do a lot of, I've done that years ago for websites and animate them across their websites for their animated banners, then for their videos. And yeah, they love that. They're seeing their vision come to life. So there's a huge market for that as well. And another thing, instruction manuals, exploded views, mechanical parts, assembly, simple animation that explain things. Done a lot of that, especially, and it goes back to training as well. Just seeing things in motion. Same thing with like medical, that's another huge one as well. I have done that, some medical visualizations where it's an inexpensive way to teach people in that industry because the alternative is actually physically have them see it, and it's not always possible, or the resources are not, financially is not always feasible. But having something that to you might be very simple, you might not have to do very complicated animation. It can be very linear, but it's super powerful, it's super valuable in that industry.
Quick heads up for all you 3D artists watching this. If you've been grinding away at tutorials and YouTube videos but still feel stuck, I've got something special for you. I'm hosting a 3D character rapid bootcamp workshop where I'll walk you step by step through the exact skills studios actually hire for. It's not theory. This is the stuff that got me hired and working in the industry. If you want to finally build a portfolio that gets callbacks and interviews, hit the link below and grab your spot. Seats are limited, so if you're serious about going pro, this is your chance.
To recap, glamour doesn't always pay. These boring 3D jobs are stable, repeatable, and surprisingly profitable. Remember, boring makes money. And I just want to talk about that as well, is that when you work at a real studio, and if you actually talk about how it actually works, especially nowadays, it's very competitive. If you're working on visual effects shots, you as a studio, whether you make your own, again, I've worked at major studios, my own company as well. I've worked with major studios and we bid for shots to do, because when you see a movie, for example, or even game cinematics or something like that, but a lot of times in movies, it's not one company that does every single shot. They usually get a bunch of shots given to a studio to do because they specialize in it, or they bid for a certain amount. They might know, okay, this studio might be better, but it's really expensive, but they might get a quick turnaround. Or this studio could do a lot of these simple shots. It might be a longer turnaround before they return it to you, but it's cheaper, or they're just available, while others might not be available during the time. So a lot of studios and consultants and independent studios, I guess you could say, are working on a movie at the same time, and they put the shots together at the end. Now, usually when you promote these movies, such as, let's say you're doing Transformers, Michael Bay, the name, or like Steven Spielberg, for example, those names are now name brands. The same thing you would have with like certain studios like ILM or Weta, for example. That would actually be used in advertising and they'll show like these really beautiful, well animated, well rendered, sculpted, detailed shots, right? Those are kind of like your sizzle reel or used for marketing. But the truth is, and anyone who've done any bidding for these studios, those are not profitable at all. In fact, if it might even lose money on some shots. So why would they even do it? Because it promotes the brand. That is what you show the public, and that's what people like. What actually makes money, one other thing about that is that to do those shots, you need your best people on it, and it takes a lot of time, and you have to go back and forth because you have to get that perfect. So it's actually, on an economic point of view, it's actually not profitable, or it's not desired. But in terms of optics and visibility, those are the things that get you the job. That's what you get known for. And that's why you have to put it out there. And that's what gets advertised and marketed and brings you new clients, new work in the future, because you're known for those things. But what actually makes a lot of the work is that, okay, we'll do these 100 cleanup shots where all it really is that you take the plate, meaning the footage that was filmed on shot, and because the director didn't want to take the extra time to like hide the wires or to remove the chair, we want you to go in, or we just built a little bit of the set and we want you to digitally extend it afterwards. So those things are a lot cheaper to do, but the companies, when you bid for it, you charge the same amount, or possibly around the same ballpark of amount, to do those same big shots that's advertised. But think about that. All you have to do is, if you hire basically like a junior to go in and just make a simple chair or extend the set, or just to go in and erase the wires per frame, or rotoscope something out, you hire a junior to do that. It's super cheap for them to do. It's tedious, yes, or it's not exciting, it's boring, but it's way more lucrative. You make a lot more margin, a lot more money off it, because you're still charging the same amount of time and work, but the actual work itself is not as much, right? And you don't need as high as skilled people to do it. So as a company, these are the type of works you want to do because it's stable, it's repeatable, it's surprisingly profitable, it's super necessary. It might not be as noticeable because, to tell you the truth, and especially in VFX, if you've done your job well, nobody's supposed to know you've done anything at all, right? So you don't get the glory, but that's what makes most of the money. Whereas the big shots, that's the big, glorious ones. Those are the ones that get all the fame and you get all the recognition and you get all the attention of that stuff. But that's the stuff that causes burnout. That's the stuff that makes you work overtime. And you have to get it perfect and you have to do it over and over again. And I've seen it so many times. But at the end, that's what you put on your demo reel, not the 100 shots that has to be done. Now, for the next step, don't wait for the dream job. Pick one of these 7 things, right, that I mentioned, that you can make projects on it, and pick one and basically test it out to see even one of these, one client or one marketplace of one of those jobs can snowball into a reliable side income, for example, and it may become your main income. It might be boring, but going in and making just 3D assets, for example, and just making some simple models, doesn't even have to be, the greatest characters. I mean, you could sell those as well, but you go in and make chairs and tables really quickly and texture them. There's a marketplace for that, and you might make some money. I know people who had the top selling digital asset for years on a very well-known marketplace, and yeah, he was living pretty well, and then he got a job with that because of that, but he was still making money off of it because it wasn't necessarily a 9-to-5 job. He goes in and he contribute what he needed to and makes money off of it. And he didn't need the actual studio job, but he did that as well. So his main job became his main income, and then he did a side hustle. His side hustle basically was what's a regular 9-to-5 studio job. So it's pretty interesting to see. So, bonus tip, package and bundle your skills as an offer. For example, if you're making a service or an offering, you could think of it kind of like at McDonald's where they have pre-packaged or pre-assembled meals, right? Which is like you could do that same thing. So you could say, I can make 3D model, render, do a turntable video as one service. It increases your perceived value instantly. The other thing, I would recommend doing that as well, because I mentioned this in another video. If you go in and willing to do anything the client wants, they'll ask for everything under the sun, right? But if you come in with prepackaged deals and say, okay, I can provide this with this amount of time. If you provide me with these things, then you can make it scalable, you can make it predictable, and you can charge a certain rate. And if they want to change things around, you could change components or change offering. But if you do absolutely anything for anybody, then most likely you could get burned out. So I do highly recommend bundling your offers. And also, if you're starting out and you're learning, you maybe only know 3D modeling. So you do your 3D models, you post those things, as I mentioned in other videos, so people are aware of your current skill sets, and you maybe start off with just that offering. While you get clients, if you're doing a freelance or you're doing like consulting, on your off time, you're learning how to render. And as soon as you're able to do that and you show people like, oh, I like your style, you can now start offering modeling and rendering service. And then you can start adding one by one. We mentioned that in another video, but that's how I would recommend starting off right away with your stuff. As soon as you have something, a skill set you could use, you can start marketing it and try to find clients and just add on to things and bundle your skills and make more offerings. And the biggest mistake to avoid, don't chase every single boring idea at once at the same time. Just like I just mentioned, focus on one, get traction on that. Once you have that working and you kind of like mastered or got it under control, then scale up and start another one and add it to your repertoire. And one by one, you'll build out a lot of offerings and you have a lot of skill sets. Dabbling everywhere means no consistent cash, right? So what are your thoughts on this? Please leave your comments below.